Hello and welcome. For those I've never met or who are new here, my name is Lori Conkler. I am an integrative success and um, embodiment mentor, and I wanted to talk a little bit today about just some things that I personally have been noticing about myself and how I think this translates to many other people. So. Specifically, I was talking earlier with some women who I greatly respect about some of the things that I was struggling with, and having it reflected back to me just how meaningful some of those things are. And I expressed to them too, like this. I was recognizing some old patterns that had been coming up and have been actively working through that. And this is, an ongoing thing because as humans, we all have different patterns that we get into, and sometimes we don't even recognize as patterns. But our place, the place where things become comfortable. And one of the things that for myself I've really had to face and work through is perfectionism. And I know a lot of you can identify with this, right? And having to have things be perfect before I can share them or talk about them. Even though I inherently know that oftentimes when I share the messy middle, part of what's going on for me, the real authentic me, rather than always trying to be the polished version of me, like that's the things that people respond to most when I share, different aspects of my story. But one of my old patterns has been in the past to not to have to get everything perfect in the offer before I can launch it, to have to, be making a certain amount of money before I share things, or, if one that was hard for me was, and that I'm actually actively working on really bringing back was money, because I had made a lot of money in my business right off the bat, and a lot for me, may or may not translate to that for other people, but in the first like full year of doing the coaching and consulting, I surpassed six figures, and I had literally never made that much money in my corporate career. And I think I maxed out around like 75, 80,000, maybe with bonus, it was 80,000. And that was really good money to me. So that when, I hit six figures, that was a big deal. And so at the time I was talking about, 10K months and everything else. And I was talking about making money. And then a couple of years ago, our financial situation had been quite good, and things shifted, made some mistakes, which I'm not going to get into fully in here. That'll probably be in another video. Made some mistakes with money, and I started to judge myself harshly for some of that, for the situation that I was in, for the mistakes that I had made. I had started to make that the underlying identity, rather than focusing on the fact that I had surpassed six figures in a year. Never having done that before in the first full year of my business. I hit my goals. I was doing a lot of things that a lot of people wanted. I had, had a lot of success financially, even in my corporate career. But then once that, kind of I started to have some issues. I reached a plateau, had made some mistakes, blah, blah, blah. I realized that starting to talk about that felt out of integrity for me then to talk about it to other people. So I would hold back and I wouldn't actually say things, or I would like gloss over, make it like really generic. Or even when I started to share things, I could feel myself like clenching and being contracted over it. And that's the energy, of course, that I'm then putting out there. And what really started to shift this for me was actually being open about this and being open about this with other people. And I was just reminded of this in this conversation I was having earlier, and how important that is, because even just like looking back at my own journey to success, the things that have been the easiest for me, the things that have garnered the most support, where I've made the most money, gotten clients the easiest. It's always been when I've shown up authentically as myself. And I also think that's one of the hardest things for people to do, and in business and relationships, in so many aspects of our lives. And I talk about all of them. But from a business standpoint, I had started to feel like a failure because I had made these mistakes and then things weren't working. So I felt like I can't talk about I can help you make money because look at my situation, look where I ended up. Um, and that's a pattern that I'm having to undo, is to stop myself from talking about things if it's not perfect. So again, like I came back from that, and last year was a really big rebuilding year for me. But revenue wise, in sales, it was the biggest year that I had had ever. And it was the year that pushed me over $1 million in sales in my business in like 5.5 years, I think. I did the math earlier. uh, but I didn't feel like I could talk about it because I didn't have, I had had this experience where it had really jarred me and thrown me and made me feel kind of like a failure because I had built something and then I fucked it up. And it feels vulnerable to share this, but the reason I'm sharing it is because I've seen this in so many people. And uh, it's this fear of being judged, the fear of not being perfect, of getting things right. And I fully believe that this ties back to, our underlying conditioning, and this feeling of we have to be perfect in order to be successful. We have to be perfect in order to be loved, to be accepted, to get paid, to do all of the things, because that is what we've embodied for most of our lives is, as successful women and as an adult we've been conditioned to believe we have to maintain that image, that we have to be perfect in order to continue receiving the things that we want. So for me, when that all happened, I internalized what that meant about me. I stopped talking about certain things, and it started to really feel really heavy. And I took out this like part of my business, which had been really important. And I want to say money is absolutely not everything, but I had put it on this pedestal for a long time and made it mean something about me, that my finances weren't absolutely perfect and that people wouldn't want to hire me and I couldn't help them, forgetting the fact that people, I know that when I'm authentic, when I share, when um, I show people like, hey, I did this and then I rebuilt from that. Like that's been what's made things the easiest. That when I've been honest, when I've been open, when I've been the most authentic, that is when I am the most impactful for people too. And it's funny because that's been one of the things for myself, like working with mentors, that's also been the most impactful for me is when they've been really real with me. But yet, I think that oftentimes we're told, you can't show up in a certain way. You can't do that. You need to be the authority. And if you say this or that, you're not going to be the authority. And, yeah, I don't think that anybody should just be out there like when I was in the midst of this, sharing all of the messy details and like coming on here and like crying and like sharing from emotion. But I also think it's important to share the realness of business because there's a lot of people that are out there just like saying, just do this, and it's perfect. But very few people talk about the things the challenges that they actually go through in the journey to building the things they want, whether it's the business, whether it's money, regardless, the career, your relationships. And the thing is even the most successful people, they face challenges. And oftentimes you do hear people talking about those things. And for myself, at least, that's the thing that's most inspiring to me. And I wanted to talk about it again because I think that it's not talked about enough. That just because you're not perfect, just because you had a hiccup in, your life, your business, etc., it doesn't define who you are. But when we start to identify with our achievements, then when we don't actually achieve the thing that we want to, or we don't get the result that we want to, we make it mean something about us, and that can really fuck you up. It really, truly can. And I experienced that myself firsthand, and it's been, you know, a rebuilding to come back from that. And I don't regret anything that I've been through because it's made me who I am. It's made me stronger. It's built me up. But I had to recognize how much of my own identity I had placed in what I had achieved. And, like many people, I had to do the work to unravel why that was, where that came from in my own life, because it is conditioning. It might be childhood, it might be ancestral, it might be something that you fucked up a few years ago. And that's different for everybody. Everybody's story is different, but that conditioning of taking on the identity of what you do, what you achieve, rather than who you are inherently as a person and what you're capable of as a person and who you are authentically at your core, because that's what when it comes to business, especially in this like online business space, where you're depending a lot on social media and your image, people really value authenticity. And the more and more we get into things like AI and whatever, the harder it is to know who's truly authentic. I mean, now they're even recording videos like your AI person. P.S. This is really me. You can probably, well, I have the blemish thing on here on Zoom. So you can probably see my real blemishes to know that it's really me. But it's why, authenticity is so important. And, I talk a lot about the new paradigm of life, of success, versus the old paradigm. And that old paradigm is you identifying with what you've achieved, what you do, rather than who you are. And that is heavy, and that takes its toll on you. And it shows up in your businesses, it shows up in your relationship, it shows up in many aspects of your life, and it can turn into toxic issues with health, relationships, business, everything else. And I've experienced a lot of those, if not all of the gamut. Um, so I wanted to, I guess, just kind of share a bit of my personal experience to let you know that you're not alone, I guess, if that's something that you are experiencing or have experienced, but also to recognize where you are holding back, where you aren't actually showing up fully authentically as yourself, and why that is, why you don't identify, or why you're identifying with what you do rather than who you are. Because how that shows up in different areas of your life, it can be Mm, I don't even know the word. Um, but for me, it came through in my business. It impacted my revenue because I felt out of integrity talking about the thing, because I thought that everybody identified me as the person who made this money rather than the person who's taken these chances, who's gotten knocked down and got up again, who has put herself out there, and I had to have that reflected back to me, and have, and probably will again on multiple occasions, because I'm human. And recognizing that my money achievements, even, like the different things that I've achieved, aren't nearly as important as the fact that I came back from that. And talking about that is more important than trying to be perfect. So for me, I was identifying as putting my identity in how much money I made and making that mean something about me. But you're never going to truly get to where you want, because that is ultimately tying your worthiness to that money. For me, I was saying I'm not worthy of teaching someone, even though I've taught hundreds of people how to do this, because I had some hiccups in my own life. Or, I'm not worthy of getting more clients because I'm doing X, Y, and Z, or I'm not worthy of this relationship because I didn't do whatever. And I should have had better examples probably, but I hope you're getting the message there. So ultimately, you are not what you do. You are not your results, but you are who you are. And showing up authentically, powerfully, sharing your story is so important and so impactful, especially now in the day and age where not everybody is authentic, and that is going to be what sets you apart from other people in business, in relationships, and otherwise. And I'm not saying don't use AI, don't do this, don't do that, but stop hiding the realness of who you are, because that is what will change everything in your life. And for me, again, that's been my own personal story, but I think it's not just about me. I think that's about you too. And I would ask yourself, where you can see, where are you making something that you've done or not done mean something about you? Where are you putting your identity into that little box of what you've achieved, of what's expected, or of what you fucked up, whatever? And then it's time to alchemize it and to shift that identity. So this is part of the process that I take people through, when I'm working with them, is that awareness, or I like to call that quantum awareness phase of the paradigm shift method, which is my method that I use. But then taking them through that, and then going into the deeper identity and embodiment work, because you have to have the awareness of what actually happened. Because I could sit here and create content all day, every day about different things, but if I'm hiding the thing that I want to talk about because I feel out of integrity, that's the energy that then seeps out anyway. And so I'm going to stop this video now. But I would love for you to join me inside the Unfiltered Collective, which is my free Telegram community. And there is going to be a link below this video. And if you'd like to take this conversation further, to talk about doing a one-off session or working with me in my one-on-one mastermind or retreat capacity, send me a message. Facebook tends to be the best place to do that, but any of the platforms where you're connected to me, you can go ahead and send me a message or an email. And I look forward to speaking with you, and I will see you here in the next video. If you have enjoyed this, please subscribe to the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and let me know. And that will help me to feel the energy of the group and also know what you like to hear more of in the future. So I will talk to you very, very soon. Bye-bye.